What's up, y'all? It's your boy, Sun God in the flesh, and today we're diving into something that's been gnawing at me for a while, Invincible, and how Invincible is basically just Dragon Ball Z for white people. And I'm gonna break that down for y'all. First off, let's talk about the Viltrumites. These guys are essentially space-traveling colonizers who travel from planet to planet, wiping out entire civilizations in the name of improvement. Sound familiar? That's pretty much how colonizers across history justified their brutality. They're doing it for the greater good. They're improving these planets by force, conquering them to make them stronger. It's not much different from how the Western world, particularly white folks, have viewed themselves as saviors, forcibly claiming territories, imposing their values, and calling it civilization. Mark's dad, Omni-Man, straight up tells him that Viltrumites believe in the survival of the fittest. Their idea of strength is all about domination. They believe in wiping out weaker species to improve the galaxy. Now think about that for a second. Doesn't that remind you of the way European colonists viewed the colonization of the world? They looked at the indigenous people, the African nation, anyone they deemed primitive, and thought, hey, if we conquer these people, it's for their own good. We're bringing them civilization. That same sense of entitlement, of seeing themselves as the natural rulers of the universe, is embedded in the Viltrumite ideology. And guess who's the center of this whole we're better than everyone else mission? A bunch of super strong white folk. The Viltrumites are essentially the ultimate colonizer, and the fact that they are presented as the main antagonist in the show that is predominantly centered around a white protagonist, that's no coincidence. Now let's talk about Mark Grayson, our hero, the Invincible himself. Here's where the DBC comparisons really hit home. Mark is more like Gohan than almost any other character in Western comic book fiction. And if you know anything about Gohan, you know that Mark is a hybrid, just like Gohan, caught between two worlds, struggling with his identity and his role. He's not the full-blooded Viltrumites who are all about conquering and fighting with unrestrained strength. Nah, Mark, like Gohan, doesn't want to fight unless absolutely necessary. He's conflicted, and the anger he feels pushes him to new levels of strength, much like Gohan's emotional growth through his own struggle. Where Goku thrives on fighting, on the adrenaline of a battle, Mark is hesitant to jump into violence unless he has to. He's torn between his father's brutal Viltrumite philosophy, which values strength and dominance, and the more human side of him that wants to protect, to love, and to be something more than just a warrior. Mark's internal battle mirrors Gohan's own struggle to balance his peace-loving nature with the power he possesses. And just like Gohan, Mark's true potential only seems to emerge when he's pushed to the edge, when his loved ones are in danger, when his emotions boil over. You see Mark's power grow exponentially when he's forced to confront his father's darkness and the weight of his legacy. It's when he's enraged, when he feels betrayed, he taps into the real strength of his Viltrumite blood. This is a clear parallel to Gohan's transformation, especially when he unlocks his full power in moments of emotional turmoil, like when he defeated Cell. The difference between Mark and Goku is clear. While Goku is all about embracing the fight, Mark, like Gohan, is about reluctantly stepping into battle, knowing it's the last resort. Mark doesn't want to be his father. He doesn't want to be a conqueror. He just wants to protect the people he loves. And that's what makes him more like Gohan than anyone else. Mark is constantly fighting to become stronger, protect the world and his loved ones, all while questioning his dad's colonial mindset. But at the end of the day, Mark Grayson is the one who is chosen to fight for the universe. It's a white boy with the power to save the day narrative. And I'm not just talking about the superhero trope. Think about it. Mark is given all these powers and abilities, and while he's struggling with his identity and moral compass, he's still presented as the one who is going to save the world. Doesn't this sound like every other white savior conflict story you've seen? This narrative plays on the idea that in the end, the fate of the world, the galaxy, and everything in between rests in the hands of a white kid. That's not an accident. That's a reflection of the Eurocentric worldview that for centuries has placed them as the saviors of the world, often disregarding the perspective, strengths, and wisdom of the very people they were colonizing. Now let's dive into Robert Kirkman's writing. I love a good comic book story, don't get me wrong, but Kirkman's work in Invincible is just too tied up in some deep-rooted Eurocentric tropes that can't be ignored. First off, look at the way the show sets up conflict. The strongest character in the series, Omni-Man, is essentially a stand-in for every colonizer figure in history. He's a powerful, godlike figure sent to subjugate weaker beings, all while wearing the guise of a protector. He wants to save the planet by breaking it down and remaking it in his own image, just like colonizers have justified their actions in the past. Meanwhile, Mark has to reject the ideology that his father tries to instill in him, fight for the betterment of humanity, for the preservation of what's good. But here's the catch. Every other powerful character in the series besides Mark has to go through some kind of internal struggle to understand their role in the universe. Most of the time, they're framed as either villains or people who need to be fixed. These characters are often positioned as the other, and their actions are tied to this larger narrative of saving the unworthy masses from themselves. But what does this all mean in the grand scheme of things? Invincible isn't just a superhero story. It's a mirror for how we as a society have perpetuated the myth of the white savior. It's the same trope you see in Hollywood, in literature, in real life. It's a reflection of the history of colonialism and how white people have historically been positioned as the ones to save the world. Whether it's saving oppressed people or civilizing them, the story remains the same. When we see Mark fighting against his father's imperialistic mindset, we're also seeing a reflection of the fight between the colonizer ideology and the oppressed struggle for freedom. The classic battle, good versus evil, with good always needing a white hero to come in and save the day. But what happens when we break that down? What happens when we question who the real good guys are? What if the fight for freedom isn't about saving others, but empowering them to save themselves? What if the real heroes aren't the ones who come in with force and violence to reshape the world in their image, but the ones who let the world remain as it is, teaching love, respect, and collaboration instead of dominance? At the end of the day, Invincible is just a modern retelling of those old Eurocentric tropes, and while it might look fresh on the surface, it's still rooted in the same tired storylines of white supremacy and the need for white heroes to fix the world. The thing is, you can only repeat the same story so many times before people start noticing the pattern. You want a real twist? Let's rewrite the narrative where the true hero isn't the young white boy who must save the world, but the ones who have been overlooked, oppressed, and forced into a narrative of survival. What if they get to be the ones who lead the change for a better world? What if the hero isn't the one who wields power over the world, but the one who learns to respect it, understands the struggles of the oppressed, and rises to power not by force, but by wisdom? Maybe that's the story we need to start telling. A story where the hero isn't defined by skin color or their ability to dominate, but by their ability to empower others, who lead with humility, fight for the greater good without having to control everything in their path. Now, let's wrap this up by really digging into how Invincible is a straight up Dragon Ball Z clone for white people. We've already discussed Mark being more like Gohan than Goku, caught in a hybrid struggle between human compassion and the raw power of his Viltrumite blood. But this comparison doesn't stop there. Nah, this whole series is basically DBZ's Eurocentric cousin, and the similarities are deeper than just the main character's growth. Look at the family dynamics, for instance. In Dragon Ball Z, Goku has his sons, Gohan and Goten, and they're constantly dealing with their legacy, their family's expectations, and their connection to power. Goku, despite being a fighter at his core, passes on those expectations to his sons in his own way. It's not just about the physical fight, but about the emotional weight of living up to what's been handed down to you. Now, let's talk about the Graysons. Mark and his dad, Omni-Man. Much like Goku and Gohan's dynamic, Mark is caught between the idea of what his father represents and the reality of who he is. Omni-Man, much like Vegeta, is a powerful figure who has spent his entire existence conquering and trying to impose his own worldview. He wants Mark to embrace the violent imperialist mentality. He wants to train Mark to be a weapon of war and destruction. The whole survival of the fittest mentality that Omni-Man pushes on him, that's Vegeta's mindset too. That's with more spacefaring colonization vibes. Now, when we bring in Invincible Season 3 and the character of Oliver Grayson, Mark's younger brother, it gets even more interesting. Oliver's character is essentially a reflection of what Mark could have been had he fully embraced the Viltrumite way. When we first meet Oliver, he's the kid who's been hidden away for a long time, just like Goten. And when he finally emerges, you see the full scope of what the Viltrumite bloodline can do. He's stronger than Mark. He's already surpassed him in terms of raw power. Oliver's introduction is like a perfect little mirror to Goten from DBZ. Goten, just like Oliver, is this young prodigy, much stronger than his older brother Gohan was when he was his age, and he's always kind of in the background of the bigger fights. What's so wild about Oliver in Season 3 is that he's presented as a future threat, a product of that violent, unrelenting Viltrumite mentality, and it serves as a reminder of what could have happened to Mark if he didn't reject his father's ways. It's like Oliver is the next step in this generational cycle of violence, strength, and conquest, and it forces Mark to realize that this is the legacy he's up against. And here's the thing, just like Goten was a child prodigy in the Dragon Ball Z universe, Oliver's existence brings a stark reality to Mark. He could be that same prodigy in a universe where the goal is to dominate, to conquer, and to build your strength through force. But Mark's not about that life. He's not trying to be another version of his father, trying to break free from that cycle, trying to prove that there's more to strength than just smashing heads and conquering planets. But with Oliver emerging, we're forced to see how dark that path continues to loom over Mark's life. He's always going to be measured against the might of his father and his brother. And the question is, will he stay true to himself, or will he eventually fall into that same cycle? And that's the crux of Invincible, isn't it? It's about breaking free from the toxic cycles of violence and power, fighting against the legacy that's been handed to you. But at the end of the day, what Invincible really represents, just like Dragon Ball Z, is a very Eurocentric story about a white boy with too much power, too much privilege, and too much entitlement. It's a narrative that reflects how white people throughout history have seen themselves as saviors, coming in to improve civilization, civilize the masses, and destroy anything in their way to do it. Invincible is no different. It's just the latest rehash of that tired old trope. Thanks for watching. I love and appreciate you all. Gomu no. Peace.
I come in clutch like a genie. Don't talk unless you need me. You talk too much, you need it. All of my bitches look like models, she in love with me. When we link, it's flashing lights and cameras. Got a